Hey guys, this is Valentina Palladino for Ars Technica, and today I'm here with Huawei's newest flagship smartphone. This is the Mate 9. A lot of the times in the US, we don't really get a lot of Huawei devices because they tend to stay in China and other Asian countries. But this one, we do know it will come to the US eventually. So that's pretty exciting considering it is a pretty well-made and interesting smartphone. One of the things that Huawei is really pushing about this is that they added a machine learning algorithm to the Mate 9 so that over time, it will age a little bit more gracefully and it won't kind of get sluggish like a lot of phones do over time after you've been using them for a long time. Of course, it would take a long time of testing to really test that out, but there are some things on the phone right now that we can look at that would kind of give us an indication about how you can use this phone in the long term and really prolong its life. And besides that, I mean, it's a huge smartphone. It's got a huge 5.9-inch display. It's got a dual Leica camera on the back. So this is definitely a smartphone that wants to play with, the Samsungs, the large Apple devices, all of those large phablet-sized smartphones. So let's get into the good things and the bad things about the Mate 9. So one of the good things about the Mate 9 is its performance. In all of our testing, it performed extremely well. Inside is Huawei's Kirin 960 processor, and that really did a good job on all of our testing. It outperformed the OnePlus 3, the Google Pixel on most of those tests, and in regular use, it was really fine to use. It was really smooth. I didn't find that there was any lag time in between, switching apps or opening multiple apps, opening multiple tabs in a browser or anything like that. So it's really an overall well-performing device. So another good thing about the Mate 9 is that Huawei did add a few things, including different apps that it has made itself to kind of optimize the performance of the device. Like I said before, we can't really judge the machine learning algorithm to see how it performs over a long period of time in terms of months or years, but there are a couple of apps and a couple different programs on here that will let you do on your phone. One of them is a thing called Phone Manager, and that just kind of gives you a couple of different ways to optimize the performance of the phone in terms of cleaning up things you don't necessarily need, pointing out apps and things that are taking up a lot of storage that might slow down the phone. There's also a lot of battery options in here too, things that you can do to kind of control the battery life. You can set certain things up so that specific apps will close when the phone is locked. Automatically, that turns off a lot of programs, so it should prolong the battery life of the device. So Huawei did add a lot of steps to give you the control of how you want your phone to perform. So the final really good thing about the Mate 9 is its battery life. Huawei put a 4,000 milliamp battery inside this handset, and it lasted a ridiculous amount of time in our testing. On our default testing, it lasted about 16 hours on a single charge. And with the graphics testing, it lasted about 5 hours. Huawei estimated that you could get about 2 days of life before you need to charge it. And I would probably say 1.5 if you're really using it consistently. But 16-hour battery life totally blows everything else out of the water, including like the Google Pixel and Samsung and the OnePlus 3. So this will last you throughout one day fully without you needing to charge it again and a little bit of extra time. So now on to the bad things about the Mate 9. The biggest bad thing that we can say about this is the Emotion UI. We've always kind of had a bit of an issue with Huawei's Emotion UI just because it's kind of a hodgepodge of iOS and Android. The design of the app buttons are a little bit different. They kind of take a lot from iOS in the sense that they kind of put everything in this rounded square, but not everything does because you can't change Google's app icons because they all follow material design, so you can't really play with those that much. So the contrast between those two kind of makes it a little bit weird to look at, and you're kind of like, what am I using? Am I using Android? Am I using iOS? Am I using some sort of hybrid of the two? There's also a lot of Huawei-specific apps that you can't get rid of, and that's pretty unfortunate. Like, you can delete a lot of the natively installed iOS apps now. You can't delete all of them, and it's the same way with Huawei's Emotion UI. You can't delete many of Huawei's native apps on there. There's also no app drawer, so everything is kind of, all of your apps are on these pages, which if you're coming from iOS is great. You might be really happy to see that, but if you're not, it just kind of puts everything out there for you to see, and you can't really go into an app drawer and search for things that you want and only have on your home screens what you use all the time. Another not so good thing about the Mate 9 is certain performances of the camera. So the dual Leica camera on the back, the rear camera, has a 20 megapixel monochrome lens and then a 12 megapixel RGB lens. And the camera itself is just okay. It performs pretty poorly in low light, images are super grainy. It takes a long time for it to focus compared to when it's just, regular lighting or good lighting. So that's kind of unfortunate. And also there's no auto HDR on this camera. There is an HDR mode, but you have to go in there and you have to set it every single time you want to take a photo in HDR, which is kind of disappointing just because that's kind of a feature that's in pretty much all other shooters. You don't really have to worry about it, so it's just another thing that you will have to turn on if you want to use it. So while the camera itself isn't terrible, it doesn't perform as well as I would like in the areas that are most important. So the last not so good thing about the Mate 9 is that we don't know what it's going to cost in the US yet. We do know that overseas in Europe it will be 699 euro, so this will not be an inexpensive device, but it's kind of uncertain right now. I've asked Huawei if they can give me that information, and they said it would be released in the coming months, and also with the availability in the United States as in what date we'll be able to buy it here. The Mate 9 is a pretty solid smartphone. It performs really, really well. It's up there with, the Galaxy phones, all the Apple phones, even the Google Pixel in performance. So if you choose to buy this, you're gonna get a phone that can do the hard work. But it's unfortunate to see that Huawei still kind of leans on Emotion UI in the sense that it's still a very disjointed experience. So if you can kind of live with Emotion UI, you might find this phone to be really, really great for you, especially if you need a phone that has a ridiculous battery life. 16 hours is pretty great. That in itself is a really good reason to be interested in the Mate 9, but you do have to take the cons with it as well.